If you'd like to help me make games, please consider donating to my Patreon. Links in the description. Hey guys, some gamer dude here. I mention Duel Masters in my videos a lot, since most of the games I'm attracted to take massive amounts of their gameplay from Duel Masters. But today is hard. I can't really say it's basically Duel Masters about Duel Masters itself. It's also hard to talk about for other reasons that'll become more apparent after I give an outline of the gameplay. If you haven't watched my History of Duel Masters video, check it out first. It gives an outline on how and why Duel Masters came into existence, as well as the circumstances that surrounded its cancellation in English. But I do have to go over some of the same ground again for this video. Duel Masters launched in Japan in 2002 as a way for Wizards of the Coast to have their own kid-orientated card game after it became apparent that they would only ever be able to translate cards for Pokemon. Duel Masters was designed by Magic alumni Mike Elliott and takes a great deal of inspiration from Magic's Portal sets, designed for a younger audience, and the Pokemon TCG, both of which Mike Elliott had worked on. Duel Masters wears its influences from Portal rather prominently. It shares the same theme of being a modified and simpler Magic, dropping instants, enchantments and artifacts. Except that Duel Masters goes one step further, dropping lands too. This leaves the game with just creatures and sorceries, renamed spells. Also, like Portal, under certain circumstances sorceries can gain instant-like properties. Even the colour pie shares a lot with Magic, being essentially the same colours with very similar themes. Duel Masters starts with your 40 card deck and placing the top 5 cards of your deck in front of you face down as your shields. They are your life. Then you draw your 5 card hand and decide who goes first. There is no mulligan in Duel Masters. Your turn starts with you untapping all of your cards and any start of turn effects are triggered. We move on to the draw phase, where the turn player draws a card with the exception of the first turn of the game. We then proceed to one of Duel Masters' at the time more unique aspects. You can now put any card from your hand into your mana zone upside down. This card will produce whatever colour the card is as a resource called mana. Magic has always had and continues to have issues with lands. You draw too few, too many, not the right ones. You draw them at an inopportune time. Duel Masters circumvents that by not having lands or any dedicated resource card. Instead, you choose a card you don't need or is of the least value to enter the mana zone, and drawing cards you can't use is significantly reduced. It's now contextual on the card's text and your total resources, rather than the card type. Multicolored cards produce either of their colours and enter the mana zone tapped. From here you enter your main phase, where you can summon creatures and cast spells. Unlike Magic or later games, only one mana used to pay for each card must share a colour with the card being cast. Multicolored cards requiring at least one of each of the colours they are as a payment. Creatures have summoning sickness without an ability called Speed Attacker, this game's haste. Lastly, we move on to the battle phase. In the battle phase, any creature without summoning sickness can be tapped to attack one by one. Unless an effect specifies that a target cannot be chosen, each creature can attack one of two entities, a tapped creature or a shield. If the creature attacks a tapped creature, the highest power wins. If they're the same, both creatures are destroyed. If the creature attacks the shield is placed into the owner's hand. If the shield has the keyword shield trigger, it can be cast for free immediately. This is one of only 2 reactive card effects in Duel Masters. If your opponent has no shields, you can attack them directly, and if it goes through, you win. I mentioned Shield Trigger as one of only 2 reactive card effects. The other is Blocker. If your opponent's creature attacks any of your creatures, your shields, or you may tap a creature with Blocker to force a battle between the attacking creature and the blocker, rather than the original target. For a long time, I didn't know how I'd take going back to Duel Masters. I really love the combat tricks that instant speed spells can provide in games like Magic and Force of Will, but when I got back to Duel Masters again for this review, I didn't miss them. I was actually taken aback by how creature focused this game is. Sure, Magic's become more creature focused over time, but not to the extent of Duel Masters, where somewhere upwards of 70% of your deck is creatures on average. A lot of why I didn't miss them is because of how very different of a game Duel Masters actually is, despite sharing so much with Magic. Duel Masters is the origins of the fluid combat system. Magic is very stiff. You send out all of your attackers, your opponent defends what they want, and you each deal with whatever part of combat you wish to. In Duel Masters, like most later games, you choose a creature to attack and their target. Whatever may come of that battle, you're not obligated to anything afterwards. That attack is that attack, and you can stop whenever you want to stop. Likewise, unlike Magic, you can attack creatures. So if something is a threat tapped and you can overpower it or run into it with something with Slayer, what Duel Masters calls Death Touch, you have creature control. Likewise, Duel Masters is not averse to making cards with restrictions on what they can attack to excuse larger power, the most notable being blockers. These blockers really do give a good defensive option. For the restriction of not being able to attack players in water and light, you get 1000 power above curve. In darkness, for a victory equals death trigger, you get more than that on Bloody Squeeto. It really does put the game in a position of the player questioning whether the attack is worth it, giving the player clearly stalling with blockers more time. On top of this, we have shield triggers. Many games will take the ingenious concept of shield trigger in the future, but it's still interesting how much influence it has over combat, since shield triggers can have some extremely strong cards. My favourite being Holy Ore. Holy Ore not only stops your opponent there and then, but completely leaves them open to attack, as it taps all your opponent's creatures. My friend still has a bit of PTSD because of Holy Ore some 10 or so years later. Even if it's not a shield trigger, the shield goes to the player's hand. You still give your opponent card advantage by hurting them. Not only does this give something of an opportunity to refill the hand, it's quite the comeback mechanic. There is also flavour in the shields to consider too. They are a physical representation of your life counter, but unlike the later card fight Vanguard where it's a threshold of damage you can take, shields deplete from max. You physically see the cards protecting you, the player, break, leaving you defenseless. It's a very different feel to a threshold gradually building till you can't take any more damage. You also have vastly less life in Duel Masters than Magic. Creatures breaking your shield is the equivalent of losing about 3.3 life. There are also more expensive creatures that can break multiple shields, known as double, triple, quattro, and world breakers, increasing from 2 to all the opponent's shields. They are very flashy card effects, but can be stopped by a chump blocker, balancing them out. All of this comes together to make attacking have much more weight to it. The decision to attack, the target, what your opponent's shield might be, whether they want more hand or to use a blocker. This all culminates to why I didn't care instant speed spells weren't here. The game has more than enough depth without them. Finally, I want to discuss the visuals. The flavour of the different colours in Duel Masters are that they are different civilizations, based on 5 different concepts. The angelic and surreal light, the demonic and unsettling darkness, the dragonic and human fire, the primal and animalistic nature, and finally the alien and technological water. Duel Masters represents this very well, and the art has a ton of character to it. A lot of the art on these cards makes a strong impression and is just very appealing in general. It has a good use of colour where things stand out. Each civilization also has many races with looks unique to them. Duel Masters has a ton of personality, more so than what I feel Magic has ever had. Ever since the wave of games that are Duel Masters but, I've become very nostalgic towards Duel Masters. It's been really eye-opening to not only research the game and where it went, but actually play it again for the first time in more than a decade, taking an adult and critical eye to it. I went in trying to see things I never saw back in the day. Instead, I quickly realised exactly why I love this game so much. I found a game that is not only superior to the games it is based on, but vastly superior to the games based on it. Duel Masters is, at least in my opinion, a perfect game. Nothing about the gameplay or mechanics really stands out as a problem. Sure, there are cards that absolutely make for a miserable experience, but that's what ban lists are for. For all the snickering back in the day that DM was nothing more than kiddie Magic, you know what? I prefer it to Magic. Without instance, it even fits the shifts in design Magic has seen over the years and focus testing results, actually predating them. It likes the flaws of the land system. The art has so much appeal and flavour. The combat system is vastly more dynamic. It's a genuinely fun experience. Going back to Duel Masters has made such a positive impression that after some discussion, it's worked its way back into my main rotation of games again. It does leave me sad that the game isn't around anymore in English, but that's what proxies are for, and I'm pretty adept at making cheap black and white proxies. I do have all my old cards and a ton of cards to boot, but adding to them is a bit hard now, especially later sets. I'd need to proxy past set 12 anyway. If you have the opportunity to play Duel Masters, either via proxies or Octagon, I say take it. Start with the beginner's block, DMO 1 through 05, gradually work your way through. It is a truly amazing game. I have experienced more than a fair share of Magic type games over the years, and Duel Masters is by far the best one. This has been Some Gamer Dude, and thanks for watching.